It looks like we got our panelist here today. Welcome everybody to the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Today we are off to another virtual event for you guys. We are going to discuss cannabis tourism, probably some lounges. We've got some experts on here to talk about that. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. We'll wait a couple minutes. It's just 12 o'clock now, and so we'll wait for people to drop in and then we'll get started. But as we do that, I just want to make sure everybody is aware. You guys can find out about our events on our website, and you guys can also find out about our membership on there as well. So today we have a couple panelists on. We have Chris Chiari, founder and CEO of 420 Hotels. Welcome. We have Arend Richard, founder of Cirrus Social Club. And is that Aaron like regular, typical Aaron, ERINAARON?
You said it right. It's Arend, like running an errand.
Okay, I wanted to pronounce that D. I thought so. Thank you. And we have Brian Applegarth, founder of Applegarth Strategies and the Cannabis Travel Association. And last but not least, Christopher LaPorte, founder of Reset out of Las Vegas. Welcome, gentlemen, again. Thank you for joining us. Again, if we want, we could, dive into it. We have pretty much a packed house. We have some slides to share with you guys. So let's go ahead and get going. How's your guys' afternoon while I pull up our outline for today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Nice. It's first day of summer, so we're off to a great start. And the chamber actually is packed with events all the way around. I believe there's one in Los Angeles. We have one out here in Inland Empire, which I'm hosting myself. And I think there may be one somewhere in one of our states. So hopefully if any of you guys are nearby our chamber or regional chapters, you guys get to come out to one of those as well. So we love being able to do the in-person and the virtual events to keep everybody up to par with education around cannabis. Are you guys all SoCal or California, or let's go? How about we do that while we wait for everybody? It's just 12:02. It looks like we got about 29 participants on. But yeah, let's go around the board, see where everybody's out of. You want to start with Brian, or I guess we could start with Aaron.
I'm in Denver, Colorado, born and raised.
Oh, very nice.
I am today I'm in Joshua Tree and Rancho Mirage's home, Coachella Valley.
Beautiful, beautiful. I bet you it's crispy. Got heat advisory.
Kid from New Jersey, raised in New York City, but Denver for the last decade plus.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. Interesting. So you're getting the two different markets, kind of a new one and an old one. So I bet you got a good start there. And Mr.
I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I've been in Las Vegas and continue to stay in Vegas as of 2005.
Very interesting. A lot of interesting things happening in Vegas that a lot of us Californians are excited about, being not too far from you guys. So excited to have you on. All right, let's jump into it. It's 12:03 now. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. We've got some questions. We got some slides to present some data to you guys around tourism. And so let's start with maybe some of the trends that's going around in cannabis tourism and how can businesses in the industry capitalize on this opportunity. I'm going to hand this up to Mr. Applegarth to go ahead and start this off, and then we can kind of dive into it with our different panelists from there.
Sure. So as far as trends, the question was trends in the industry, Casey, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think, I think of kind of the global landscape. And when I think of the trends, all the trends kind of center around the experience economy. So basically people that can access cannabis experiences in travel and tourism. So in this instance, it's a visitor or a tourist. And there's actually some data that we're going to go through sooner that really talks about what are these kind of destination drivers as far as these cannabis experiences. To answer this question in this moment, though, before we get to the data, I would say a lot of the trends that I'm seeing is one, the standalone cannabis experiences. And this would be in a curated setting. So not necessarily just a lounge space or a consumption space, but you're starting to see a trend toward kind of a high touch curation. The intersection of cannabis and culinary really is an exciting trend that's kind of taking off. Another trend we're seeing is like a stronger IQ from the cannabis travel audience about the capacity for cannabis to be a pairing mechanism. So enhance certain settings. So being able to utilize cannabis in an intentional way of kind of a specific cultivar or product to be a precursor to an experience in travel. So almost like a pairing. So those are some of the trends that I'm seeing. And of course, this lounge era that's taking off in different, more mature markets, very exciting. And you're seeing people really look strong at West Hollywood right now because of the innovation and creativity of the lounge landscape there. And I think that's going to be an evolving trend. And I think that, you know, true to form, I think West Hollywood is one of those California trend-setting markets that's going to help set the tone and play a role in influencing how, you know, these lounges and experiences evolve. So yeah, that's what I see happening trend-wise.
Gentlemen, anybody have any insight on that? I know he kind of touched on West Hollywood. I'm not too far from that here in SoCal. Any trends that you guys see different out of your states?
Casey, I know we're going to bring this up a little later, but it's important to talk about this. And Brian, thank you so much for bringing West Hollywood up. But I want to highlight the fact that once a year, state rep in California seems to get national news when they propose Amsterdam-style coffee lounges in California. And what that reminds me every time I see that bill get filed every year is that at the state level, California still hasn't leaned in and addressed what the regulation of cannabis hospitality will look like. And I'm curious to see as that state evolves on the topic, and then certainly what the impact in a city like West Hollywood's going to be. And that innovation is happening then under municipal control, but might that unfortunately be impacted by state regulations, where I'm grateful for what we're experiencing here in Denver. We have it at the state, we now have it at the city, similar to Nevada, where they have it at the state, they now have it at the city. So those regulatory pathways and licensing are clear. And so our horizons are a little bit more secure, I think, because we're still not waiting for that state policy to be enacted.
A lot of factors going on in there, and I think, like you said, it comes down to licensing, state regulators, and then zoning, I hear, is also a play in a lot of things. And so, Arend, you're out of Colorado. How are things looking as far as trends there?
It's so interesting, the question about trend, like what is a trend, right? Is it something that's happening right now that's taking off in the last year, that's like the last 5 years? Like, what are we specifically defining as a trend? I think the trend for hospitality has on the majority been, hey, we have a dispensary and we can sell weed. Let's put some chairs in here and call it a weed lounge. To me, that is the current trend. I think that there are some new trends that are coming out, but you know, it's a slow trickle into reality.
And I'll just chime in, you know, as we opened the first state regulated lounge with the Thrive team with Smoke and Mirrors, with over 90 days of business currently operating, what we're seeing as a trend, perhaps 70% of our revenues are coming from cannabis infused drinks. And, you know, during this very arduous ordeal in terms of getting these licenses approved, you know, we were explaining to our regulators that we're not going to see a lot of people smoking flower. And it was an assumption that we made. We had a confident feel it'd be like a 50-50 split, but the, you know, acceptance from a larger audience outside of the traditional cannabis legacy consumers, 70% is a pretty significant number. So we're excited to see that trend continue.
I want to pack onto that trend as well. I think beverages is a huge future in unique hospitality experiences, and there is a lacking for it in my current market in Denver. There's not an option for social consumption, low dose beverages that come from Colorado cannabis rather than hemp derived beverages, which we can't sell because we have no intoxicating hemp in Colorado. So it's very interesting trend that we're gonna see of like all these manufacturers are making things specifically for dispensaries, and they're unwilling to move from that sort of formula of consumer packaged goods into hospitality and service. And there's going to be a huge need for it very quickly. So if I was on the manufacturing side in Colorado, I'd get on developing some 2 to 5 milligram beverages.
And if I may piggyback one more time on, you know, this little love fest between he and I, In 2022, the non-alcoholic beverage market in the United States was little under 400 million. Globally in 2024, it's going to be 8 billion. And, again, operating a lounge today and seeing what we're seeing, the low dose market is a massive opportunity for us to go outside of our traditional cannabis consumer and introduce new markets into our space. And the low dose the low dose option and offering is a key component that companies have to see as an opportunity. I don't need to sell a 100 milligram drink of sips just because today's market likes it. When I'm looking at guests literally asking for, let me have 2 or 3 drinks of that 2.5 milligram, and I'm selling that at a $16 market, it's the play for the market to grow.
I had a post on LinkedIn get a ton of comments about nobody's going to want beverages in your lounge. It's all for smokers. You don't know what smokers want. And I'm like, you're talking about dispensary customers. I am talking about people who want to go out on a Friday night. Your bottom line is get them into your store and get them to spend money. My bottom line is get them to spend time with me. It's a different bottom line.
Casey,
Yeah,
real quick, everyone here on this call, first off, is a trendsetter, right? But it comes down to the nuance. And Arend, you're right? The intoxicating hemp here in Colorado is very challenging, but there actually is a path to intoxicating hemp. It just requires that 15-to-1 CBD to THC, which most bottlers or canners have been reluctant to bring to market. To be honest, in my business, I do have an operating hotel, a tavern that's open to the public through another entity, and then I'm bringing in the Cannabis Hospitality Lounge. And all of us are doing the same thing. We're working very hard to normalize and destigmatize cannabis. And I know many of the consumers will one day hope to see these two, alcohol and cannabis, maybe find homes in the same place like you're seeing in New York State. The paranoia, of course, is keeping them separated. But there are some paths, and we are looking at just waiting to see what's going to happen with the Farm Bill, if they're going to throw intoxicating hemp completely out. But if they don't, the intention is to bring a 15-to-1, not just into the property where we'll have it available as an add-on or a beverage in the cannabis lounge, but also a place to start mixing cocktails, not just mocktails, that include alcohol in our bar and CBD, as a way of pushing that line of normalization by being legal in our operations, but being bold as we still bring this segment of cannabis to the final mile.
Wow. I hope you guys are taking notes, although this will be on our YouTube, so you guys can go back and take more notes. That was all very good information. Where do you guys, actually, do you guys want to go through the slide now? Does that make sense for you guys to go through the slide now, since we're kind of looking at different data and you guys kind of shared the trends in your guys' states? Does that make sense for you, Brian, since you put it together?
Yeah, we can whip through this data as that sounds great to me.
Okay, and I'm taking questions. So in the meantime, for all of you guys that are tuning in, if you guys have any questions, please make sure you guys type it in the chat and we'll address them towards the end of our session.
And yeah, if you just want to jump on slide 2, we can just start on a couple lexicon things. And really there's just a handful of data points to really help communicate who the cannabis travel audience is, to talk about destination marketing a little bit, and to give some context as to the findings of 2023. And this data that we're going to hit on specifically in a minute comes from MMGY Travel Intelligence, who's been studying and profiling the cannabis travel audience in the United States since 2019, 2020. So let's do next slide, Casey, please.
Okay, second. Can you guys see it?
Yep, it's just on slide 1.
Give me 1 second.
Well, I'll start talking through the lexicon real quick while we do this. So the first one is just the concept of a destination and looking at tourism through a destination lens. That's my orientation to this, and I think all of us have a little bit of a different viewpoint on that. But I do look at, what Arend and the others are creating with lounges as destinations in their own right within a greater kind of location destination or tourism destination. The cannabis travel audience is an audience that makes their destination and vacation decisions based on access to cannabis related experiences. So this is a travel audience of about 72 million Americans that decide where they're going to go spend money every year on vacation based on access to cannabis experiences and activities while on vacation. The visitor spend is very different than the resident spend. Resident spend often is looking for value, low price leaders, BOGO deals. The visitor spend is looking for experiences and life memories. Like to Arend's point, it's creating an experience, it's getting time, it's having people invest time and have a journey where, you know, obviously those revenue streams are all unlocked in really creative ways. We look at things in terms of destination drivers and what is motivating visitors. So I'm just going to jump into the data. And Casey, if you just want to pull down the slides, that's fine too. I can just walk through this data verbally and that will set the tone anyways. So again, this is the cannabis travel audience. The study was conducted in summer 2023. 37% of the active leisure travelers of the United States are cannabis motivated. They take 3.7 trips a year. They spend a little over $3,000 a year on travel. There's about 4 archetypes. You have the cannabis curious, the cannabis wellness, the cannabis connoisseur, and the ceremonial cannabis traveler. Nearly 6 in 10 Gen Zs and millennials have an interest in participating in at least one cannabis-related activity while on vacation. Some of the key motivators is this travel audience is really drawn toward nature. We see that over and over in the data. They also consider themselves more environmentally conscious than the average traveler. Last year, as far as activities of interest, the top 5 were visiting a cannabis shop, visiting a cannabis tasting room or sampling room. Number 3 was visiting a cannabis lounge or cafe. And then I also want to point out number 6. Number 5 was visit a cannabis farm. And then right below that was visit a mildly intoxicating cannabis-infused spa, having a spa treatment with cannabis. I think it shows the flexibility of everything from beverage to spa to smoking. And I think it's important, obviously, that cannabis has the ability to manifest in all those ways for the cannabis experience economy or tourism. The next data point, it really talks about that connective dotted line where cannabis enhances arts and culture and food experiences while on vacation. So pairing the effects of cannabis or effect pairing cannabis with other parts of the tourism ecosystem, like restaurants and like arts and culture, is a really great strategy for tourism. And the data shows that 31% are interested in cannabis enhancing your food experience, and 29% of this audience are interested in using cannabis to enhance art experiences. So that was the data. So I'll just leave it there, but that's the information we wanted to share around this audience and some of the insights from last year.
Brian, where do the concert goers fall in that lexicon you have? Because we've had the Grateful Dead, Dead & Co. here in Vegas now for about a month and a half, and that is a cannabis experience in and of itself right now.
Absolutely. No, that's a perfect example of the intersectionality, right? It's an event, an attraction. It's got Grateful Dead, which is a cannabis cultural phenomenon. That's part of the story. It's got music. And when you weave in that cannabis element, it's like, it's that 360 experience. That is a sensory experience, right? As far as where it lives in the data, I'd have to dig a bit deeper, Chris, into the activities. I have about 25 here ranked, but I'd love to follow up with you after to talk through that specifically. And we are developing out the module. I've been doing this with MMGY since 2019, and we are building out the module for this year. For late summer, we're going to have a new data set. So starting to kind of dig in deeper on those. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as a sidebar.
Brian, I'd love your insight on this thought around legal versus friendly, right? I'm a consumer, so I seek out friendly when I can find it because I'm a consumer. But most of us here, all 3 of us here, are working towards or operate in licensed environments. I'm curious to know what consumer reaction. And then it relates to, because you said the cannabis. I went to the Sphere. I went to that experience. I saw the Grateful Dead. It was amazing. They were very hands-off. They engaged the first time that someone might have lit a joint, but they never said anything again. And so I wonder, most consumers that don't smoke an ounce a week, like some people I know, me included, that most people that don't consume that frequently or that much might take 2 hits and go to the spa, or take 2 hits and go to dinner. And most of that consumption happens on the sidewalk outside, as opposed to in a destination cannabis event. And so I'm curious to see how if that is starting to emerge around that.
Yeah, so I think your first question was about cannabis friendly versus cannabis like licensed and compliant, right? Yeah, I think it's obviously it's patchwork landscape. I think of the cannabis event license being very relevant as well. And I think that having creative business models, and that's why I think West Hollywood is a great example of this. You know, they have, well, one is they're packed on a Friday, Saturday. You know, it's one of these. I hear a lot of lounge owners saying it doesn't make money. The answer is it's not being activated correctly, because you got to create an experience and you got to be creative with what is possible. And that's kind of the world I live in, is what does exist today, what could people access, what experiences are standouts. And West Hollywood has cracked the code on this in a lot of ways. There's this, you know, I'm thinking of the OG Cafe in this moment, Pleasure Med, all four of them, the ones that I recently visited, are really amazing. And they do have this, even this alcohol component where you can walk 10 feet away and get a bottle of beer or a glass of wine, and then go back and sit at your table and have food along with cannabis and other things. I also think that inhalation often takes the air out of the room. I think that high THC and inhalation gets a lot of airtime. And I think that there's often neglect when it comes to all the other form factors of cannabis and types of products that can, just like that cannabis infused spa, right? Like the audience has an appetite for that. So let's encourage those creators that are inspired by wellness and building out and catering to that cannabis wellness traveler. Let's give that airtime and keep building that out as another mechanism for cannabis to thrive in mainstream travel, right? And what was your other question, Chris, besides the regulatory compliance side versus the friendly?
It comes down to the, let's say, volume of consumption of what is now this emergent consumer, and whether or not we're just taking 2 hits outside and then going for the experience, or if we still have opportunities to attract them to experience-based destinations.
Yeah, I think volume of consumption is such an important and very full, wide spectrum conversation, because I mean, I start with cannabis tourism thinking of a hemp seed and nutrition, and how do we integrate that and the cannabis leaf as a decorative element. And, you know, so I think when I think about consumption, I think if you're hitting high THC joints or if you're hitting dabs, that's a very different type of, the archetype of the cannabis audience is different, right? Than somebody who's doing something that's more educational and informative. And I talked to one of these attraction dispensaries, and they were telling me that 30% of their traffic come in and basically leave. There's like not even a transaction. They're like going in just to see the spectacle of a modern day, you know, California or Las Vegas or wherever cannabis lounge or shop. And so then the question becomes, it's not really about consumption, it's about experience curation. It's about creating a life moment and memory that's exclusive and interesting. And people walk away stoked on it. And then they're, you know, that word of mouth marketing goes, I think that's the big opportunity here, besides obviously the revenue opportunities. If you create that the right way, this, the marketing that you can get out of your lounge and how you activate that experience is significant, because we are, you know, we all know the people that are kind of helping innovate the frontier of this new cannabis experience economy that's in the mainstream and therefore part of travel. So I think consumption's a big conversation. I think that it has a place in hitting the joint before the concert. I also think that it has an integrated opportunity within, obviously, and there's a lot of ways you can do that.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was great conversation. We actually have a question that I think may fit into that. It's a question / maybe almost comment. We went to Hash Flight. I don't know if you guys are familiar or saw any of the marketing that went out for the Hash Flights. That was labeled as a non-smoking event. Does this play into regulation and loopholes within? Beverages were on site as well and were at 5 milligrams in addition. We went to Reefer Madness in Hollywood, and the smoking section was designated to the parking lot in a Sprinter van. It didn't seem legal, but also not illegal. Strange times.
We should do a game show segment, friendly or licensed.
That would be great.
I'd label that
Any
one
comments
friendly.
to that? I think we're seeing that all the way around in many. I do see a lot of people taking the time to do events at lounges and using that space in that way. I know me personally, I visited a couple here in my area. I've had the pleasure to be at the Woods, and they've had like the cabanas. For me personally, it comes down to the experience. I've been a heavy smoker for a really long time, so the smoking part is not really that cool or appealing to me. It's what I get to do in there, or what I'm going to experience in there, or maybe be able to try, as far as brands being innovative with their products, and even the consumption lounge, thinking about, you know, what does it look like for me to bring in my own devices so that I don't have to pay to rent things. All of those things come in play from a consumer's perspective. So anything to what you guys are seeing as far as like the loopholes when it comes to this? And then we'll start diving into some of the actual hard questions we have.
Most operators that are operating around loopholes are able to do that. And again, let's start out again. I'm a consumer, so I seek out friendly and have spent a lot of time on the road and traveling the country. 8 trips to Amsterdam, have experienced cannabis as culture, cannabis in these deregulated, decriminalized, and then in many cases legal markets. And so we're still all looking as a community for solutions or events or clearly a path to social consumption. But the rules around, like you're saying, making that decision between bringing your own bong in Colorado, example of that nuance between a different state or jurisdiction. If it's a bring your own, you can bring a pipe. If it's a place where you're selling, then you have different relationships between what types of accessories people can use on their own. And in some cases, it's none. And so finding solutions, creating safe space, or at least creating enough safety or distance between a regulated event that might be serving alcohol and a safe space to consume cannabis has been the solution. And I think does address a great amount of, I think a lot of that tourist demand, front porch on a cabana. But we will have destinations like Vegas, like Denver, where finding something more extraordinary will also fit that market and succeed, and likely will be able to compete alongside an outside event that doesn't get a license and just lets you smoke in a Sprinter van. But if that's happening, that individual's assumption that this doesn't feel right, license, regulatory space doesn't feel like that. I went to Smoke and Mirrors. It's professional. It feels like going into an establishment. That word carries meaning. And that is something very unique in my experience as a consumer in cannabis for well over the last 15 years, as I've been crossing the country smoking, and a consumer now for 32 years.
Perfect.
Thanks, man.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that experience with us, Jeremy. We do have some questions for you guys that we wrote out that we wanted to make sure that we asked so that our panelists can kind of tap in on it and our guests can learn from it. Questions that we have right now is hospitality, you know, evolving globally in the next 10 to 20 years. What do you guys think is going to happen in the future, and what developments are you guys anticipating already now that you guys see is going to be exciting for us?
Thailand's going to make it illegal again. Thailand's going to make it legal again. Thailand will make it illegal again, and they'll probably make it legal again. There's my
That's one of my notes. That's funny you mentioned that. I was going to ask about that. So I guess we'll start there. I'll just throw it out to anybody who wants to go ahead and start with what they're seeing as far as involvement and development in that space.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
I think short, immediate term, we're going to see concepts open that showcase cannabis in a new light and get new types of people attracted to it. And that is going to lead to a new level of normalization in culture with cannabis, and an increase in adoption, continued decrease of alcohol consumption, continued increase of cannabis consumption in many different forms. I think we'll get to a future of smokeless inhalation, and lots of beverages and fast acting stuff is going to be the future, because people really want to feel that immediate onset without that sort of like trippy effect. And I think in 10 years, you've got cannabis beverages and smokeless inhalation devices sold at the Super Bowl in the stadium to be consumed right along alcohol. I think that is the pathway forward.
Bold prediction, and I hope it's true. As you know, the biggest hurdle we've run into is how do you create indoor smoking space in an environment where the Clean Indoor Air Act is the law of the land? And for most who followed the Clean Indoor Air Act, it was originally pushed that you as a business owner couldn't create smoking sections. That lost in the Supreme Court, and California and New York came back and made it about employee safety. And so as operators of these type of spaces, we have an obligation to meet standards that create a safe working environment for the team members that we hire then to work these businesses. And that's that place where smoking, I think, is still facing that hurdle. We're about to have a conversation with people from Massachusetts. They're just struggling with it. New York, perfect example of a state that is allowing greater access to consuming cannabis anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, while further restricting the places you can smoke cigarettes. And now back to Colorado, where a very cannabis-friendly governor, when he first got into office, was anti-vaping of nicotine and juice. And his efforts to outlaw and ban indoor vaping ultimately impacted cannabis consumption, and also took away what had one time been a 25% of boutique hotel rooms were grandfathered in to still be smoking rooms. It was actually the first path that I had to offering at least vaping in the guest rooms that literally was taken away less than 9 months after I purchased the hotel with a change in the law back in 2019. So I want us to get there, the normalization of seeing these things be equal, but it is that consumption usage that Brian just talked about. It really does translate that we haven't yet found the correlation between a pint and a serving of cannabis, and figuring that out will speak volume. And I really think speed that path to normalization and seeing at least the beverages side by side with a beer before we might see a vape or a smoking section for cannabis.
And I just want to follow up and say, in my future vision of the cannabis industry, I don't see smoking as part of the future. It is smokeless inhalants, which I think is something yet to be developed that I would really like to be part of, and beverages.
And I'm giving away papers, but no blunts. So no tobacco, but smoking a joint is my preferred method, has been for 32 years. And there will be room for both of us, right, to create and curate these spaces that I think will attract this blossoming and booming market.
Yep, there's a place for all, I would say. Being pre-roll judge for Emerald Cup, I could definitely say there's a place for all on both ends, for sure.
One hitter. Primary method.
Exactly. Got some nice dog walkers out there.
I think, Casey, can I jump in on that just real
I was
quick?
going to ask, yes, if you guys have anything to
Yeah.
talk on that.
Yeah. So I think as far as future, I think for tourism and travel, I think it's really going to lean heavily into the microdose flow state effects. So, really having a solution in place and created experiences that can take people on kind of a safe journey to understand entheogenic effects at the microdose state or flow state level. I think that there's going to be another whole market for the journeying and for, doing the work with integration and leaning into cannabis in that way. And that's going to come in the form of retreats and a lot of intention and kind of ceremony and ritual. And yeah, so I think that I agree with Arend as well. I think it's really going to trend toward these kind of these, and I even take it a step further. I think it's going to be very beverage heavy. I guess Arend's on that page too, but with vape as well. I just think that it's going to continue to trend for mainstream consumption and travel toward a beverage and spa, and also infused culinary. And I think those are going to be the most relatable, because I do think it's changing, but I also feel like vape and anything inhalation has an uphill climb just by nature of it. It's not cannabis. It's just, people look at blowing anything out and they look at it as a bad health impact. So I think that's a big stigma to overcome, and that transcends cannabis.
Don't you think, Brian, it's a lot about, we're in this phase right now where we have to normalize cannabis consumption and social cannabis, but ultimately 10, 20 years down the line, it's about integrating cannabis into life, right? And I'm not saying that means people smoking joints at tables. Like, you can't smoke joints or blunts at Cirrus. You can smoke some things, and I love that for Cirrus, but ultimately is the goal not like I can go to Barcelona wine bar one night and order a cannabis beverage instead? Is that not ultimately the goal?
Yeah, 100%.
Where's the need then for us, right, Brian? Your relevance to this message or comment about cannabis hospitality.
It's impossible right now.
Tourists finding a place to go, it getting to the point where you can have wine or a cannabis beverage in a Barcelona wine bar would likely possibly speak the end to the Barcelona smoke clubs, or even ventures in Colorado that aren't built off of some other business that isn't just that experience-based cannabis.
If you can make the to be part of the common culture, pop culture for 20 years to get us to that point, you've done a great job.
Yeah. I go ahead, Chris. Is that
I just want to chime in from the perspective of the dining and the edibles and, the idea of introducing this new consumer to this market before it gets kind of let go, and now, cannabis is rescheduled again, and now it's just everywhere, potentially 25 years, 30 years in our lifetime. But more importantly, today, realistically, the education is just so necessary. Our next project that will be in downtown Las Vegas will incorporate infused dining, so more front facing, to attract a larger audience. But the fear that is still out there and the unknowns that we hear from guests, regulators, just randoms about, well, is this going to be that brownie experience that unfortunately everyone still has? So amongst ourselves, sure, we understand what this market is and what it's capable of, but there's still so much more to get more people out there outside of these traveling cannabis chefs to start talking about, the opportunity with cannabis edibles and cannabis beverages. I just think while we're all excited about the future of cannabis hospitality, I'm 47, might not see it in my lifetime where it gets to where some of us want to see it, just because there's a larger audience out there that still doesn't understand.
Christopher, I'm 50. In our lifetime, we were told time and time again, weren't we the dreamers that said, oh, it's going to happen in our lifetime? And they kept saying never, 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 never. And to even be engaged in this type of topic, the fact that we're finding paths to indoor air quality that meet these standards, there are paths forward. I do get back to necessity, right? You have created a brilliant experience. The beverage, right, is that quenching. It gives you a reason to want to be there. It creates an environment very similar to a bar where you're socializing, enjoying over time. Infusion is food, that realization that one consumer might want 10 milligrams every bite, and another consumer is going to be more comfortable with 1 milligram every bite. And to be able to cater it then to the nuance of what someone wants, whether they're called bud tenders, flight attendant. I know, Aaron, you're using that term. They're using that term out in West Hollywood as well. That guided tour to the next layer of cannabis consumption beyond the store shelf, where consumers are coming in and asking for experience-based products, something to help them sleep, something to give invigoration or energy. Some consumers are coming in for flavor and taste, but that next piece of how we'll pair that with food, natural terpenes that will enhance and stimulate and complement through the entourage effect certain strains in unique ways, how a guest will make good decisions around consumption so that they walk out of our establishments, which is our goal for every guest. And a guest that walks out is a guest that walked out informed because they made decisions that were built off of information, not out of uncertainty of sticking anything they can in their mouth. That brownie story, right? You put as much as you could in that brownie, and now we have the option of 1-2 milligram bites. And that's where the fun starts, because then that flavor, the food, and again, that entourage effect becomes the next chapter of this.
But don't you think it's our responsibility as people who are starting this industry and working on, like, maybe not even that, maybe from even a higher level, for cannabis mass acceptance, appeal globally, some sort of standardization has to exist eventually, to where it is not every time you're walking into any cannabis business whatsoever, they have a different methodology. They don't believe in this. They believe in this. This is actually what works. This strain does this. Meanwhile, scientific testing last year proved across thousands of strains across California and Washington that there was not one single genetic similarity to strains called sativa versus indica. That is it. Like, yeah, so sure, it's a farce. We all kind of agree that that's a farce. But what else is? What is the serving size? I've got people in our comments on social media already being like, I can't have a 100 milligram beverage, nothing else will affect me. And it's like, well, I have to make a business and take responsibility that anybody can walk up off the street and come in here and leave with their senses, because that's my responsibility. And I'm going to have to supersede their needs above yours, person with extreme tolerance, with all due respect.
I have a liquor license. I have tips training because I bartend a couple nights a week in my business, and have a responsibility to look at every guest, count their consumption, not based on number of drinks, but on the potency of that drink, whether it was a shot, whether it was a mixed cocktail, a beer, or a wine. And that awareness is something that's already established in alcohol that I think we will embrace and figure out the SOP on that in cannabis hospitality. But the big thing about alcohol is we all have that one friend. They take one drink and they're a mess. We have that other friend that drinks the 6-pack. You didn't know they had any. And I think we all recognize as consumers and engaged in this as culture and community, that the physiological impact of cannabis consumption across the broad spectrum of people is similar. Some individuals react and have an overwhelming impact from a small amount of edibles or dab, and other consumers will go on to smoke all day and, write music.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do agree with that. But like, like I could have gone to the bar with my mom back in the day and had a single, and she could have had a double for every drink I had. And we still would have had the same amount of drinks, you know what I mean? But she could still keep drinking beyond me. So it's like that whole thing of like, we have to set the standard of what a serving is, and we have to like determine that. And it's
Will
a
the
really
market do that?
decision.
I mean, the market will somewhat do that, but I think the best we can do is give good guidance, right? Be that purveyor of information, especially for the new consumer that can.
No, I think we have to do it because otherwise the government does it. If the government does it, then we're screwed.
And this
Like
is where I
we have
want
to do it.
Well, so there's a serving size on a box of cereal, and it doesn't stop someone from eating another Cocoa Puff.
right.
There's a
But
serving
it is
size on a
dependent on
bottle of
how.
Coke, and I drank the whole dang thing.
Good
No, and
point.
this is why I keep bringing the fact up that, I've always looked at the social use lounge business opportunity as a bar concept, only because of the similarities to coming out of Prohibition and how things took time. We're all excited, but, I'm more aggressive working with outside audiences, i.e., thankfully, our state regulators put together a pretty fantastic bill that now our college, UNLV, has put together a Cannabis Policy Institute. And it's filled with very, very passionate and educated people who are helping to put some of these ideas in a much more formal setting. And we can start getting things that are less anecdotal and, to your point, not in the government's hands first, but let's just get more people outside of our space to help get into this conversation so we can put these things out there and, again, have a nationwide kind of standard, hopefully. But that's always been our goal in Nevada and Las Vegas, is kind of develop that gold standard.
Here we are, right? How many years since the implementation of home brewing and microbrewing, and we still have 50 different state policies that are subtle but nuanced and different in every single one. So that's probably going to be the reality that we face 10, 20, even 50 years from now. I spent 8.5 years on the board of Colorado NORML. My engagement in this has been beyond just as a consumer. It's been around being vocal in the policy and present at the process, which is so important. And the reality is normalization and legalization demands even more focus on engagement, because now we're moving into consumer issues and consumer protection issues as we're moving against and away from criminalization and crime and punishment. But the protection then to consumers, the way that we create standards or then around serving size, is going to happen from a consumer advocacy space. So I would encourage anyone to stay involved with any of the cannabis advocacy groups. I still am passionate about NORML as an organization, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, because of their positioning in this since the birth of normalization in the early 1970s, with Keith Stroup founding the group. But the work doesn't end. It actually becomes even more important to get right to Arend's point that we need to set that standard, but it will probably more likely happen in hearing rooms in state capitals than it will just happen because we implement good businesses, though implementing good businesses will then give regulators a standard, or at least a place to say this worked, we can build off of that. We're still in a big world of unknown with so much of this, because of the number of licensed operators really are regulated to one just outside of the border of Denver, and the few of you who've been successful in opening up in Las Vegas. The rest of us are still in that vision space. I am proud of the fact that I'm operating a hotel for 6 years, have a bar, have cash flow already, and I'm trying to add the lounge to that. But we're all still pioneers, as a friend said, but the Donners were pioneers. And don't forget, they ate each other one valley away from Lake Tahoe. So I hope we all make it across the last valley and try not to eat each other along the way.
Yeah, I think it's always going to come down to education right now. There's a lot of education that needs to be done on a lot of different levels, and done in ways that our audience can absorb it. To that and everything that you guys have been talking about, we did have some questions about what you guys are seeing as far as different destination models in cannabis tourism and implications that consumers or operators face when they're going through maybe some of those loopholes.
There was a question that just came up that speaks to that, a question around the similarity to a cigar lounge and a cannabis lounge. They're almost identical. The cigar lounge or a new cigar lounge would be required to meet the same standards. I was hit with a little bit of a curveball by a regulator in Denver when he asked me to prove that the team wouldn't be exposed to secondhand THC. My reply was, can you point to similar standards around secondhand exposure to nicotine in a cigar lounge so we could use it as informative to a solution? And when the reply came back that there is no standard for that in nicotine, it gave us a real footing to push back against that attempt to create new policy. And at least on the last draft of our HVAC plan, that's been removed from the question because, in fact, and Christopher, you've now, I think, proven that carbon filtration and pomegranate can remove these toxins, both human volatiles as well as cannabis volatiles and particulate, to a satisfactory standard that meets international code.
And that's the big key here is what are the regulations that you have to meet in each state? Because, you know, again, we were lucky in Nevada to have a very entrepreneur friendly opportunity where we can kind of create, you know, a very experiential, like walking in a museum is a concept I've seen. I've seen a sports bar concept. I've seen this restaurant concept, but it's because the regs allow us to do it. And it's very limited in how many of those licenses are out there. So they're going to watch us every step. And so I am excited about West Hollywood for what they're doing to pioneer the space, integrating kind of food and beverage. But there are other, you know, states that don't have the luxury that we have in terms of, you know, the offerings that we can provide. And the one thing I like to kind of regurgitate to a lot of people is, how big is this market? Like, let's be honest with ourselves. How big is this market and how are we going to, you know, create something for everybody? You can't. So the best venues to create are the ones that you believe most in, to create your own community, develop said community, and then grow the cannabis industry as a whole. It's not trying to find, oh, we have to make this thing for that cannabis niche. No, cannabis is a niche in and of itself. Just make something that you believe in, build that community, and build that events and excitement so that more opportunities can open up and more states start to get a little more lenient and you can start doing cooler shit with your cannabis.
Christopher, I said it, but you've all captured it with smoke and mirrors. Well done.
Brian, Arend, did you guys have anything you guys want to share on that? We do have, it looks like a couple questions in the chat as well, so we can go through that before the end of this panel.
Brian,
Kind of seeing
I'm trying to remember the question. I can't remember the question.
No problem.
I think the next one's good.
Yeah, skip to the next question. There's enthusiasm for it.
Maybe you guys want to talk about the hurdles that are facing. I kind of feel like we've kind of touched on that, but if you guys have anything to tap on that, and then while you guys do that, I'll pull up some questions from
Financing. You know, I own a traditional business, a hotel, a bar. These assets, the real estate, the hotel pillow sales, the liquor sales, have nothing to do with cannabis. But lenders see the entirety of the deal. And though 350 square feet in my basement, a 25-person lounge that's an amenity first off to the guests, and then an event space on top of that, is all of a sudden the whole thing is cannabis. And so one of the final hurdles has been getting investors that are, one, comfortable with still the risk profile that is inherent with cannabis, but then also recognizing the assets, cash flow, and that relationship. It's getting easier. I know Aaron's been out there looking. I've been working at this for a couple years with 2 capital raises on Start Engine and Republic. So there is an audience to support and invest in businesses like this. But my issues literally come down to the underlying mortgage financing, where lenders still have this aversion. Likely have pushed through that hurdle, but it's literally been a daily challenge as I've been navigating a refi on a hotel that's coming up due the end of this year. Again, a traditional legitimate asset. I already generate 60% of my post-cannabis lounge build-out revenue through my current operations. So those are cash flow that'll never be related to cannabis, but the overall business already has that from, like I said, current operations. But even there, the aversion of mature financial institutions and lenders in New York and in banks across the country is still this concern that somehow even a bring your own venue like mine is tainted by cannabis to the point that they have an aversion or discomfort to fund.
Thank you for sharing that.
One hurdle that I see is just, and it's not even a hurdle or an issue. It's just, I think, basic evolution. When you're opening up a new industry on the global stage that has the complexities and in the best of ways and capabilities that cannabis and hemp have, from the entheogenic effects and all the other tools in the toolkit, it's a very big conversation. And I think that that is why this evolution is sometimes slow, as it should be, because I think the plant deserves to have the passion players on every front, trying to educate and bring forward this information and build businesses around it. So when it comes to hurdles, I think that, being very, like Chris kind of hit it on the head for me, LaPorte, like it's, cannabis is so wide that picking your niche and knowing your audience and following your passion and kind of leaning into that is like, I have a different orientation. I'm a little more spread out with different clients doing consulting work and destination marketing. And I think that's where we're at in the evolution. What I'd like to see in the next 3 to 5 years is just deeper connectivity between the travel industry and the cannabis industry in mature markets, because there is a lot of synergies between the two industries. That also means that understanding the culture and the lexicon and how they measure success, data is really important. There's about 100 lounges and cafes and stuff right now in California, all throughout the state. And to be able to start aggregating data and kind of flagging or categorizing the different kinds of lounges, looking at the imbibement, starting to just get intelligence around this as a community, knowing that there's room for everyone. And there's competition, but it's so early. It's like, and everybody's in their own space, building their own dream. And a lot of times they're just reinforcing of each other's success. So I think keeping that mindset and continuing to aggregate data, and for the cannabis kind of industry viewers of this, if it's cannabis heavy, which I suspect it is, really starting to understand how to partner with travel and tourism, which is a huge industry. I think it's like an $8 trillion industry projection. It's just in Europe, I believe, by 2028 or something like this. Like it is absolutely significant, or 8 billion, excuse me. But it's a significant opportunity to understand destination marketing, visitor spend, and how the travel industry measures and grows and looks at the global visitor economy. And I think the businesses that want to be a tourism and hospitality business, investing in that is a really important step at this point for businesses that want to be an attraction and be part of this.
Arend, did you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, everything Brian said was amazing. My goal is definitely to get Cirrus on as many blogs, websites, influencer posts of best things to do in Denver. I think I want Cirrus to be right next to Casa Bonita on all of those lists. And that's a huge goal and a huge investment moving forward. And speaking of investment, I did have to go out and get funding. It was an interesting 7 or 8 months of searching for funding, but we kept getting pushed up against from investors, like, no one's done this before. We haven't seen this work. We can't do this until we've seen it work. And so our team got together and we started selling pre-opening memberships, and we started doing partnerships with brands, and we started growing a wait list. And within a month, we had $100,000 in pre-opening revenue, $100,000 in partnerships. We had a 4-month wait list already. So once we started taking those pieces of data back to investors, it kind of changed things for us. So we had to work a little bit harder. We had to put our nose to the grind and convince people of it before we even opened. But when that worked, it's also great because it helped us be even more prepared for our opening in October.
Well, congratulations to you. When I get out there, I will definitely make sure I stop by.
I'll get you a nice table in one of our little living rooms.
Oh, I would love it. All right, it does look like we have a couple somewhat questions, slight comments in regards to the conversations we've been having. Unless you guys had anything else to say to that regarding hurdles. I know you guys covered a lot and we're kind of against the time here.
I see that.
Wait, I can tell you about a hurdle. Is the city of Denver on this call?
We don't know.
I'd love, we should compare notes, because I would say that the city of Denver has proven to be not an obstacle as far as the licensing departments. Some of the individual, like the environmental, proved to be a little bit more engaged and demanding than some of the other departments. But Denver is desperate to see us get across the finish line. And I say that from when I put my extensions in that normally take, 10 to 12 business days. They get that done in a matter of hours, which just shows the level of follow through that's happening when it comes to these unique licenses that are coming to market. But one of the questions that was in there was around insurance. I'd love to hear, Christopher, where you ended up. I ended up with Golden Bear. Colorado does require those of us that are renewing lounge licenses, even if they're not opened, to carry at least some form of general liability insurance for that entity. And Golden Bear was very enthusiastic in writing policies and seemed to be the ones stepping up, at least here in Colorado, for this space.
Insurance in Nevada is a different beast. Las Vegas is very, we just have it a lot easier. I'll just leave it at that. And as long as we put together extremely detailed overconsumption prevention rules, and basically having a plan with the local Metro Police Department. We also have a 24 non-tow procedure for our venues as well. And so because of all those extra steps, insurance was actually not that hard to find.
Brilliant.
All right, thank you for sharing that. It looks like somebody had commented, Michigan allows alcohol in cannabis lounges. I don't know if anybody's been to Michigan or have experienced that. Anything to that?
Right, but
there's some
what
other-
municipalities, what's big cities in Michigan, a state of a lot of larger cities, what big cities in Michigan have moved on into local regulations establishing path to HVAC standards, something that is usually governed by local county or city municipalities, not ever covered by the state. State set standards, or I'm sorry, the state set maybe overarching guidelines, but it is local municipalities that enforce air standards, at least when it comes to building permitting and licensing of establishments that require.
And some of us on this panel don't want to mix alcohol with cannabis anyway. And I think that should be the prevailing mission for us, because again, once laws change and perhaps cannabis can be, purchased in any venue 10 years from now, as long as we've created something that's committed and specialized in cannabis, we remain relevant. So I'll let everyone else mix their alcohol and weed.
I
For
absolutely.
relevance, you're right. But as far as what society wants, I think New York State shows. Went to 3 shows. I'm a big Twiddle fan. Went to the shows at the Capitol Theater in November. And the space on the side where people have always been able to smoke cigarettes, now we can have a drink in one hand and a joint in the other. And basically, we're encouraged by security that this was the place that we could do that. From a responsibility, from keeping our lane, yes, keep them separate. I am trying and executing, bringing them side by side with 2 separate business. They won't be accessible to each other. I have a hotel restaurant in between, but I am committed to the normalization and destigmatization of cannabis. And I think we get there when we can find as many spaces and places where these complex licensing can be achieved, where they at least cohabitate and exist in similar spaces near each other, like you're seeing in West Hollywood that Brian's saying is showing success. I offer that now, a courtyard space where you can drink, purchase food, and then a cannabis lounge experience, which you can peel off to also for a food and beverage experience, but also for a bring your own cannabis. And when you're done and you make that decision, if you do transition back to the other business, yes, there'll be even greater burdens of the responsibility. But I would say go into a multitude of cannabis business networking events. A lot of people are already consuming both side by side. And so I think the impacts on the general consumer are relatively known when we mix that. And I'm not sure that letting society still demonize it or stigmatize it by saying that we should fear the mix. This is one place I do disagree. I think normalization will be achieved when they coexist. But until then, I'm going to get them as close together as I can.
So to give it some fair amount of equal airtime, I just want to agree with Chris LaPorte on this 100%. And I think that the demonization should not be on cannabis, but on alcohol. And I think it is on the way out. Personally, I don't drink. you know, alcoholism ruined my family. I don't mind anyone that does drink, but I think that there is space for non-alcoholic spaces. And I think cannabis is going like this, alcohol is going like this. We don't need to join the thing that's on the way down to validate it.
Not a matter of validation. It's a matter of not continuing to
Normalization. I don't need to
or
normalize
from our
it.
own leadership in a movement to say, hey, we recognize that we're so different. Part of the movement and success of cannabis was making those comparisons between it and alcohol. And I think there's room to still do that. But you are right with the trends around consumption. But at the end of the day, we have to build successful businesses that not only get to market, but succeed. And if we bring brilliant ideas to the table, but we can't execute them, we are not going to move any of this further. In fact, we might set it back, but not for the normal consumer that takes their 2 hits and goes into a restaurant, goes into a show, and really doesn't need either of our businesses, any of them. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see how consumers truly do embrace cannabis hospitality once we get to normalization.
All great points. There was one somewhat of a question regarding what do you guys, or how do you cigar/social clubs play into this transition with smoking indoors now? I think you guys have kind of talked about the vaping, but I know there's social clubs now that are cigar lounges. Do you see them, you know, coming into play? No.
Like nicotine cigar to weed.
I would imagine, yeah, cigar clubs is the actual comment.
That would be a large, very different demographic. That's like getting my dad and all his buddies to smoke weed, and it's possible, but it's going to be a little while. Like their culture of what they're doing is so. Someone once told me that the tobacco plant is the male brother to the weed plant. They're just opposites. Do you know what I mean? So like
What
they're
about
different
hookah
experiences.
lounges?
Yeah.
How about hookah lounges? Have you guys seen any transitions of them, maybe even allowing it, not so much transitioning to that whole, no. I've
No
seen it died
jurisdiction
out
so
here.
far is allowing tobacco and cannabis to coexist. They are very strictly separating that, like alcohol. I'm a melanoma survivor, so surviving cancer. I used to smoke cigarettes. I haven't had one in 23 years. So I love personally going into a smoke-filled room and knowing that it's puree, that it's cannabis smoke, and I cultivate that in my home and look forward to cultivating that in the lounge I'm building, knowing that there isn't a tobacco element to that. But they are very separate. It is the same rules and regulations, but it's the reason that you haven't seen very many hookah lounges or cigar lounges open, except sometimes in unincorporated counties or in jurisdictions where they are not enforcing ASHRAE, which is this international standard around clean air that defines what IAQ or indoor air quality means for employee safety and human safety, right? We all exhale what's known as human volatiles. You can only have so many, such a concentration of human volatiles before people cannot exist in that room. And so there is already a standard in every restaurant or bar or any commercial establishment you go to. The standards around that, of course, are just significantly enhanced for what we're doing. Half those standards in Vegas, luckily, had a lot to do with the fact that they still allow cigarette smoking in 25% of the hotel rooms and in casinos at, I think it's a 30 CFM exchange rate, which is half what Denver is holding us to for our indoor lounges. But it just shows that we have a long way to go. We have a lot of agreement on some of the, I think, cores to this, but we also have different perspectives and we also bring different life experience. My ambitions are driven by what I said I was going to do at 18 that I am literally executing today, driven by going from minimum wage jobs, working through the capital markets and security markets, being in regulated spaces, and then bringing that knowledge to bear on a space that I'm passionate about, because at the end of the day, it's something that I've been doing a long time, that I still do. I still love. I've taken 2 hits. I'm about to take a third as we've been on this call. This is normalization, all of us. No one path to get us there, but a whole bunch of different ways that I hope all succeed, because all of us succeeding are good for what we've been working on and what we're building towards, which is normalization.
Yeah, I think everybody has their own audience to cater to, and there's space for everybody in regards to how you guys want to build them out. There is another question on here. Thank you for answering that. And I think the person came back with kind of clarifying that it was more so the switch from cigars to cannabis, as far as, I guess, the business owners deciding to switch the script as far as them being a cigar lounge to now a cannabis lounge. Is
The
that
very few number of cigar lounges in Denver, which I think there are 3 that I know of, none of those 3 have so far expressed an interest in making that conversion. But really the only hurdle they might face is distance restrictions. Do they have an overlapping distance restriction within their 1,000 feet that would preclude their ability to license?
And I'll just throw in real quickly, I don't want to see that happen from the perspective of I'm trying to teach people to have lower infused cannabis when they're enjoying their time. And now we're imagining someone with this fat Godfather cigar and how much THC is in that. So, again, it's sure, let's see if it works. But as I'm seeing these, daily operations, I'm trying to find out ways to make cannabis more approachable to a larger audience. Therefore, to go after another niche of a niche, I think it just shoots ourselves in the foot.
To that point, I will say back to education is, companies or organizations like PhytoFacts taking the time to go down the genetics and helping these brands really create these products to help lounges like yourself have those products on shelf is going to come into play. I know, it's going to be something that they're going to have to want to invest in, but I think that's where it's going to be huge, because being able to understand what your consumers, your particular audience, your customers are coming in for are also going to depend on what brands are producing in today's market. So very interesting times. All right, so let me get you guys got one more question, and this one is actually for Chris C. Would you have the intent of cannabis beverages and hemp beverages available via service or room service and mini bars, or do you have hurdles doing this?
When it comes to a 15-to-1 intoxicating CBD to hemp beverage, we are, I said this earlier, looking and exploring and getting a manufacturer to can that for us right now, with the intention of bringing that as a product into our bar, because I really am and believe that we push the needle and push the edge by acting legally in licensed ways, but in bold ways. And to me, I believe being bold would be 1 milligram of THC, 15 grams of CBD mixed with a shot of alcohol. And I'm sorry if that gets anyone uncomfortable, but this is the work I've been doing for 32 years, and I've not deviated from it. And I've been very honest.
Oh, bro.
We have to be bold. In many ways we are. This is one way that I'm looking forward to continuing that. Room service, we don't do that at the moment, but having those types of beverages available, even a 15-to-1 available in the cannabis lounge, because it would be allowed, is something we do intend to have in our inventory, depending on the outcome of the Farm Bill, which is currently working its way through Congress, which has an amendment right now that does outlaw intoxicating hemp. That means what you know as beverages and gummies in markets like Texas and across the country could go away, not overnight, but could become illicit overnight, recriminalizing a segment of the cannabis industry and filling jails again with hemp purveyors and hemp consumers instead of cannabis consumers. That would be a bizarre world that I don't want to see or live in.
Oh, great points. All right, gentlemen, I think that's all we have as far as our questions from our audience. Is there anything else you guys would like to end this with? It's been very impactful as far as what we talked about with cannabis tourism and hospitality. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I have. Again, this is going to be on our YouTube channel. The description with the links for that data as well would be on there. But let's go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys want to go ahead and last few words before we chime off.
I have to jump off, but I just want to say thanks to the Chamber for bringing everybody together. It was nice talking with all of you guys. Great time. Can't wait to see how we all do.
I encourage all the members on the panel to join me. I did join the Chamber as a member. I think it's important that we have cannabis hospitality represented in the Chamber as it builds, so that we can carve out a space for these types of policy conversations that will be a complement to what Brian was talking about before that's happening in California. So please, if you haven't considered already, consider a membership.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Excited to be on the chapter with you. All right, gentlemen. Brian?
Sure.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you to the Chamber. What a great discussion. It's an honor to sit on a panel with all these participants, and thank you, Casey And I just encourage everybody to think about how a visitor spend is different than a resident spend, and how destination marketing is different than consumer marketing. And, Google it. It's worth doing. And I would urge everybody to really think, if you're an attraction, having a dedicated travel industry strategy that kind of forces you to think outside the box with connective threads to the travel.
And I'll echo everyone else's sentiments. Thank you so much for the time, and just keep everyone on this panel to keep an eye on Las Vegas. You're going to see a lot of new social use lounge concepts coming out over the next 9 months to a year. Reset is personally involved with at least 2 more venues that we'll see open Q1. And I look forward to working with all of you to make sure that we create what you guys want, but I had to want it too.
Brian, Christopher, you're here on my screen right there. And I just want to say it one more time. I loved the space. That what happens when you walk in, how you feel, how staff engagement, the types of products that you sell. I saw that you made that move with the beverage director, which just reinforces what you're saying. It's a strong leg now of the business that you're seeing mature going into coming up on 100 days. So anyone going to Vegas for any reason, stop by. Absolutely worth it.
Can't wait. I'm here in California, and I'm actually super, super close to you guys, not too far.
Yeah, 5.5 hours away. Drive up there tonight. It's
I'm only 3 hours, so I'm not too far from you. I will definitely be checking you guys out. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, you guys can check out the replay of this on YouTube, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email. We're at the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much. Have a great day.